Beach is really a community that's looking for its personality. And even before Florida became a state in 1845, there was people settling along the Indian River in small little towns. And one of these little towns was Woodley. That was the first name for Winter Beach. They had a post office as early as 1893. A decade later, they changed their name to Quay. And the reason they changed it to Quay was because Senator Matthew Quay of Pennsylvania had allocated over $200,000 to dig a canal in the Indian River Lagoon. And then much later, in the 20s, they changed the name again because no one wanted to come to Quay. So they had a contest and the winner was Winter Beach. So now they have found their personality. You know, you always come back to your hometown, and one of the ones that came back was Dr. Harry Hurst.
I'm Harry Hurst. I'm a native of Indian River County. Winter Beach was basically a farming community made up of people who had moved down from different parts of the northern part of the state because I'm sure of cheaper land and farming possibilities. Of course, that led over to your schools, which were established well in the 19-teens. So schools were developed. That was available. They had their churches, the Primitive Baptist Church. You had the fishing, which was very popular at that time. And of course, later on, the bridges would be coming in. But that basically was a rural farming community. I'm guessing if we had 600, we were lucky. It was a very small community. I grew up in Winter Beach. We all were poor people, but we didn't realize we were poor. We were just like our neighbors. Most of us, we owned our little cracker houses. Remember, in those early years, there was no electricity and no running water. The church was very vital in our community. The school was very vital. Over the years, we saw the school close. The church, which was very active, very vital in our life, the Baptist church, it was really part of the key of our social life. Years later, the church disintegrated. We began to see all the older people begin to die out or move away. There are very few people living in the Winter Beach area that are natives of that area. Probably if there's 12, we're lucky. I have a painting that's very special to me. It's a reconstruction of the Wigfield House as it was on Johns Island. And of course, it was moved over to the mainland in the early 1900s. It's a prime example of the progress that had been made in the housing of the people on the island. Winter Beach's personality was one of a loving, caring, supportive group of people sharing common interests and goals.
The Walker family were bridge tenders. Mr. Walker was the bridge tender for the Winter Beach Bridge, and his daughter grew up in the middle of the river as a bridge tender's daughter.
Growing up on the river was really great. I was about 5 years old when we moved over there. My dad was a bridge tender. He would let the river be our playground. The Indian River to us was just the way of life. So it was a great community to grow up in. Quay Bridge was the bridge that drew the people from one side of the river to the other. We felt like a part of the community because everyone walked over to the bridge and would go swimming just about every weekend during the summer. And they were very friendly, and we got along really great. It was very important that we were able to be there 24 hours because he had to open the drawbridge for the boats, whatever hour it was. Yeah, it does make you proud to know that you were part of history like that.
Every community has post offices. One family had a particular role in the post office, and Faye Estes can tell us all about the post offices that were in these communities.
Winter Beach is where I grew up. Winter Beach is also where my mother grew up and where my grandmother grew up. Used to play on the Sand Ridge, and also I played in the post office. I still remember before it was closed down, walking on the platform of the railway station, and you could hear the train coming from quite a distance away. My grandmother would attach the mail sack to this arm that she would swing out. Train would come along with this big hook on the side of it and snatch it up and take off with it. Well, the Winter Beach Post Office was, that's where everybody would come to pick up their mail. They built the first freestanding post office, and that was whenever it was changed from Quay to Winter Beach. My great-grandfather, Carrie Fletcher, he was the last postmaster of Quay. Right as it changed from Quay to Winter Beach, that's when in 1930 my grandmother was installed as postmaster. She was postmaster for 41 years, and she was the one and only female in the whole state of Florida. My grandmother retired in '71, and then my mother became postmaster in '72, and then I became my mother's clerk. I retired my reign as a clerk to start my own family. That's one of the things I'm proud to say, that I'm a descendant of the early pioneers of Woodley, Quay, and Winter Beach.
The Hamilton family is a prominent family in the Winter Beach area. They were here when it was Woodley and Quay, and of course Winter Beach. In fact, the development that they wanted to do on the Barrier Island and on the mainland, called the Winter Beach Estates, was the catalyst that changed the name from Quay to Winter Beach.
My name is Peggy Hamilton. My great-grandfather, Edward Hamilton, moved to the Narrows in 1905. His wife had died in childbirth, and his 15-year-old son had died from the yellow fever. So he came down with oxen and wagon, looking for a better life. They were farmers. The Winter Beach Cemetery, a Mr. Charles Benedict in 1896, and a Leopold Furgot, and they bought 40 acres of land in that Winter Beach area, donated a half an acre of land for burial. It started out with that half acre, and then later in 1910, Felix Popple and his wife, they donated 1.5 acres. And in 1938, I think it was, Samuel and Martha McCullers Hamilton, they're also relatives of mine, donated 10 acres. Today it's on 15 acres with approximately 2,700 graves dating back to the Civil War. In 1919, a Mr. Charles Braswell moved to Fort Pierce. He was a real estate developer and land developer. He came up with this grand plan for a huge development in Winter Beach. There was one in Vero Beach as well. Plans started around 1921, 1922. It was an 8,000 lot development from the railroad track, 1.5 miles on Old Dixie right there, and going all the way over the proposed bridge, all the way to the ocean. It also included an 18-hole golf course for marketing purposes. They wanted a better choice of name instead of Quay. They put an ad in the paper, and a lady named Mrs. Robert Brown in Fort Pierce won the contest. She won 2 lots. They named it Winter Beach, where sunshine spends the winter. It was huge. Big, big plans, very exciting times. It never came to fruition. There are several different reasons why. Indian River County had been formed. There was also an embargo at that time. It was the land boom or bust. So they couldn't get the building supplies to build. Plus they'd lost the county seat. 2 hurricanes hit, and the Depression came. So those were the great things that came out of it, was the bridge, and they changed the name. That was the story of Winter Beach Estates.
Bobby Lindsay is one of the longtime residents of Winter Beach on both sides of his family, and he has a special story about his grandfather and the old road that went from Quay to Fort Drum, which is 28 miles into the interior of Florida.
My great-grandfather, D.C. Cox, moved to the Winter Beach area in 1904, along with his family, one of whom was my maternal grandfather, W.F. Cox. Around 1910, The only place he could go to high school was in Fort Pierce. Following high school and acquisition of a teaching certificate from the University of Florida, he started teaching school at Fort Drum. And that meant once a week, very early Monday morning, he made the trip from Winter Beach along Quaydock Road to where it intersected with the Fort Drum Road, traveled by horse through the marsh all the way out to Fort Drum and stayed there during the week. However, there was one occasion when he left Fort Drum too late and got caught in the marsh. Black, dark, he couldn't see the lights of the coast yet, scared to death, didn't have a clue which way was north, south, east, or west. But he said he gave the old horse his reins, and the horse found his way through the marsh. And I've been out there after dark. It's not a spot I would want to be amongst the mosquitoes and alligators and other critters at that time of night. So I guess we're the descendants of some pretty hardy pioneers that developed this area.
We are trying very hard, this Historical Society, to capture old Florida, and Winter Beach is one of those little communities that produced a lot of exciting and innovative people that have gone out into the world and come back to make Indian River County a special place. We're very happy to share their history, and we look forward to bringing more stories about our little communities.